Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the April 20th, 2021 City Council meeting for the City of Cannon Falls to order. Could we have roll call, please?
Bringold.
Here.
Duncan.
Here.
Gesme.
Here.
Cronenberger.
Here.
Lundell.
Here.
Montgomery. Here. Altoff.
Here. Would you rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, before I do approval of agenda, we're going to do a little switching. The MPCA is going to go first tonight, and then we'll do the school referendum and then the small cities development grant. So with that, I'd like approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Duncan and a second by Gesme to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, we'll get right into our presentations, and the first is I'm going to talk about the molasses spill from MPCA Progressive Rail.
Good evening, Council.
Oops. At the base.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go. Good evening, Council and Mayor. So tonight I've got Mike Rose with me. He's from the MPCA. So he was my contact right away when this kind of started. I got in contact with him pretty early that morning, and he kind of helped me take the lead on it, I guess, as far as what was going on in an environmental standpoint. So Progressive was going to be here tonight as well. They've since backed off on that as their investigation is kind of evolving. They kind of sought help from their legal team and thought it was best right now to say nothing. But I have put the request to them that at a reasonable amount of time, could take a few months, but we did want some answers out of them as far as cause. So that's not something that Mike and myself have tonight is cause. We're more going to talk about, let's give you some quick detail on what happened that morning, as far as the call went down, and fire department's involvement, how Mike got involved, and then if you got any questions for him, he can answer those. I'll probably lean on him a little bit just to talk a little bit about like the cleanup crew and kind of what they were tasked with that day. So going back, it was Tuesday, March 23rd. Is when this happened. We did get a 911 call from the Progressive Rail Company at 7:03. And at that point, they had told us that they had a rail car that was overheating. Not sure what was going on yet. That was just the original call that we had. Very quickly after that, we got another 911 call from the site, and that was at 7:05. And that was them saying that the rail car had exploded. And they were working on in between there to evacuate some stuff out of the area. Minute later, Officer Eltoff was on scene from the PD. And he was updating me. I was on the radio by now that they had some structural damage, some kind of an explosion had happened, and we had things venting into the air, 200-300 foot into the air. So right away we knew something significant was going on. Luckily for us, we've had some previous training there. Our previous fire chief, 2 fire chiefs ago, worked for Progressive, so we kind of knew a little bit about what was going on there. Right away in my mind, it was molasses. That's what I had a kind of a thought would be going on because I know how much comes through there. So we made a call right away for utilities to get gas and power shut off, and then we kind of had to get there. So we go on 3 different pillars when we get to a scene like that. The first one is life safety, right? Is anybody hurt? Do we need to evacuate anybody else? Do we need to save anybody? Progressive had done a good job before we got there of notifying the houses, had got them out of the way, and kind of to a safe area when the energy release explosion, or you want to call it, had happened. So that had gone well, and nobody from Progressive was hurt, which was surprising. So that was good. So they had a good accountability when we got there. So right away we could kind of check that box, and we knew we didn't have any patients, for the ambulance, because we had them called as well. Before I even got to the scene, I had Tony Hahn's number from Public Works, so I'd given him a call and said, I don't know what I got going on, but I got some kind of explosion. We're gonna probably need some road barricades. I might need some stuff shut down. So they were already spun up and coming too. Then we move into insulin stabilization. That's our next thing, is what do we need to do to stabilize what's going on? So we started checking temperatures on the car, figuring out what was going on, getting utilities shut down, kind of investigating and just going to that mode. Once we could see the temperatures were coming down on the car, that told us that our main problem was probably over. And then we had to get into identify the problem and protect property. And we did have some pretty significant property affected on theirs and the neighbors. So I'm required to report in a very timely manner anything over a 50-gallon spill. And that's how kind of Mike gets into the play. So anything over 50 gallons, we deem we really need some outside resources to tell us if this is going to have an environmental impact or not. So knowing a rail car and knowing the thousands and thousands of pounds that were in there, we knew we were over 50 gallons right away, and just the pure area that was involved. So I called the Minnesota duty officer. That probably happened, I think it was around 7:30. I made a phone call to them, so about 27 minutes later after the call. Told them what I had going on, had to explain it a couple times because obviously nobody knew anything about a molasses explosion at this point. It's kind of a new thing for everybody. It was a very unique call. And so they got some players in, and that's kind of when the PCA gets involved because we do have an environment. It's sugar, right? But anything at a certain quantity can be harmful in a way. It doesn't matter if it's milk or if it's whatever, anything over a certain amount at some point can do some harm. So I wasn't comfortable making the call that sugar was benign and we're gonna do nothing. So shortly after that, we got in a conference call with a bunch of people. Had a state fire marshal responded down. They had come down by about 10 o'clock. We had to deem that the structure was safe. Utilities were off for third-party contractors to start entering. Because around that time, Progressive, who works with Union Pacific's rail line, had called them to say, hey, we got a problem on the rail line. And then since we could quickly identify that it was a private party that caused the problem, it kind of turns into them to fix it, right? But we still have jurisdictions, we want to make sure it goes well. So they had got a hold of their contractors, which was like Iron Eagle and a company called Wenk. You would have seen 2 of their vehicles in town. They had a bunch of vehicles, but that was the names on them. They're their cleanup crews. So they came in, and I think it was around 1 o'clock is when we probably first met face to face. And that was with us, and Goody County Emergency Management was there, Sheriff's Office, Union Pacific, Progressive, I think kind of all the major players. We had all kind of just formed a circle and started talking it out. And at that point, the oncoming rain was kind of an issue with us because we knew that was going to dilute the product. We did have some video that had surfaced on the Facebook and on the media of us flushing streets. And I got some comments that, what were we doing? We were just cleaning the streets and letting it go. But what the videos didn't show was we had already dammed and boomed, where a lot of that product was going. So we were trying to keep it out of any of the waterway entry points, to the river and stuff like that. And that's kind of when I kind of stepped back and let Mike kind of advise me and kind of advise everybody on what to do next. So I think, do you want to talk about a little bit of your step in then and where you went with it? Yeah.
Your Honor and distinguished council members, I appreciate the opportunity and then the invite to be here tonight. I would say you've got a pretty darn good fire chief here. When I was on board, he had pretty much all of the things begun before I had even reported on scene, and I was really pleased with that. I've been doing this for about 30 years. I work with the MPCA. I'm with the emergency response team. And so we're that element within the MPCA that has authorization to speak for the commissioner, to spend money, to allocate and coordinate resources across every division within the MPCA. We're in the operations division. And normally how any state agency becomes involved in an incident like that is through the Minnesota duty officer reporting capability, and the chief reported the incident to the Minnesota duty officer. The statute that the MPCA works off of, Minnesota statute, is 115.061, and that's the statute that requires the entity that's in control of a substance that, if released, which we consider to be gets out of a container, regardless of what the container is, if it has the potential to pollute waters of the state, and so that can be groundwater and that can be surface water. And as the chief has spoken earlier, many food products are are considered a pollutant. To be truthful, literally almost anything that hits the ground, to include sediment that runs off of a construction site, is potentially a pollutant. In this case, food products have a high oxygen demand typically when they break down and decay. And depending upon how and where they settle in a receiving body of water, can cause an oxygen depletion and often can result in fish kills, and that's the concern that we would have with a food product. You had mentioned milk spills, egg spills, whey spills, a lot of the different type of ag processes that occur here in the southeast can result in fish kills and so forth. But the process for how we became involved was through the duty officer. The duty officer is the one-stop shop for reporting incidents throughout the state. It's available 24/7, and it is the preferred method of notification for reporting incidents and to receive state support and assistance. There's somebody available 24/7, any time of the day, and that's how I was notified that the incident occurred, and then I planned on mobilizing to the site, which I did, and I interjected with what the command structure was at the time. We don't step in and assume control of the incident. We're here, as I mentioned that day, to support the chief and any of the requirements or state resources that I can bring to bear, to include hooking up with my counterparts with Ag, Department of Health, Department of Agriculture, I mentioned, DOT, State Fire Marshal's Office, the whole gambit. And so it was determined that I felt very comfortable with the role that your chief was involved in, and so I stepped up to offer the state support, whatever that was. If he would have wanted me to share in the decision-making within Unified Command, I certainly could have too, and I was prepared to bring any contractor assets that needed to be put in place. But it seemed like at the time that Progressive Rail was doing what they needed to do. They hired 2 contractors. Wank is usually a preferred contractor for derailments and so forth that involve the main line rails incidents. They're very experienced, and they have connections with Hultcher and other companies that are involved with removing equipment and locomotives and so forth, and then dealing with the environmental component. So in this case, the chief went through the LIPS acronym, so to speak, for ICS, which, life safety, incident stabilization, public protection, and then my piece with the agency, part and parcel to that, is the environmental. What can we do in the process of mitigating those other threats and risks? What can we do to protect the environment? Now, I'm not going to ever step in and interfere with decisions with the first responders in order to protect the life of the public, the responders, to stabilize the incident. I hopefully can provide some guidance that helps protect those interests plus the environment when there's options that can be contemplated. But as far as the MPCA's overall review of the incident, I thought that the resources that needed to be brought to bear, the objectives that were discussed, and the work tasks that were agreed upon in order to achieve those objectives were spot on, and they were done in a timely manner. There was really 3 or 4 work areas. One was the area of the incident with the tanker car. One was the area that affected the residential properties, and then of course the river and beyond the river, the park, and other areas that were identified. And also the Progressive Rail agreed to hire a contractor that came in with drones, because we wanted to see what other areas of product deposition might have occurred within that swath that moved in that direction away from the source area, and then of course the park. And I really felt like the resources were implemented in a very timely manner. There were silt fences and other type of absorbent boom that were placed to prevent additional product runoff with the rain into the river on the opposite side of the river, as well as protecting product runoff from the residential sites. Silt fences were also installed to the back of those properties to prevent that from occurring. And then we talked about the restoration that would occur with the residential sites and with the city. And we had a talk again with Progressive Rail that ultimately the city, who's the property owner of the impact to the park, that would have to be restored to the satisfaction of you good folks, in addition to dealing with removing the material that could potentially get into the river. What got into the river and went downstream, and there's not a whole lot we could do there. But from what was deposited on the land, I think that the response was pretty top shelf as far as I'm concerned. I'm still waiting for the report from Iron Eagle. If you would like me to come back later with the chief, I can provide a little PowerPoint presentation from the MPCA's perspective as far as the initiation of the response, and then the response and the cleanup, and then the data that supports the recommendation for no additional work from the MPCA. But since this did impact private property and the city's property, you have the final say on approving the final restorative work that would be completed by the responsible party's contractor. And I can answer any questions that you may have tonight, and if you think of something that you'd like me to respond to later, you could funnel those through the chief, and I'd be more than happy again to respond back to the chief and or come back again at your request. Any questions?
No?
Well, I think we did a good job. All right, well, thank you. Thanks for the other presenters for letting us jump ahead. It's my fault. I got to get to a training obligation, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, guys. Thank you. Okay, next up, we got our superintendent of schools, Jeff Sampson, who's going to give us a rundown on the school referendum.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, City Council, for having me come tonight and give a presentation on our upcoming levy referendum on May 11th. It's the first time giving this presentation standing up, by the way. So if you see me start going like this, just call the fire chief back there, right? That would be great. So as we go through this, I'm going to stop periodically after each question and see if there's any questions that you guys might have or clarification that you guys have that are needed. But if not, then we'll just kind of keep moving on through the presentation as well. So first question is, how did we get here? And so a quick history on where the school has been and what we've been through since 2015 up through about a couple of years ago, and then where we are headed. In the years 2015 to 19, the district did have a substantial fund balance in their undesignated fund, which is their savings account, if you will. And at that time, the district decided to invest in one-to-one technology, which was just starting to come into schools and was seen as a very good investment for our students at the time, not only here, but throughout the state. At the time also, the district was in bad need of indoor air quality projects improvements throughout the district. And at the time, the district had enough money to finish off the elementary school building, and then about 50% of the indoor air quality within the high school, which is mainly on the west sections of the current middle school, high school. And they left the unit ventilators in the classrooms in both the middle school and high school sections. And so at that point, they decided that they couldn't finish them off with the rest of the HVAC system, and so they left the unit ventilators in those classrooms and decided to fix them up the best they could and get more life out of them. And so basically, I don't know if you want to call it kicking the can down the road, but the can kind of landed here at this moment, if you will. So when I arrived in the fall of 2019, one of the things that I discovered was that our undesignated fund balance, our savings account, if you will, was down to 2%. And the board policy at the time, and still does for today, called for an 8 to 12% fund balance in that. And so the question that I had for the board is either we change the policy or we raise that fund balance up to the policy that it calls for. And the way you do that is either you raise your revenue or you cut your expenditures. And by raising revenue, we'd have to garner a lot more kids into the district in a short amount of time. So the obvious choice was to lower expenses. The number that we had come up with at the time was $700,000 worth of deficit spending. And instead of cutting all of that, that would have been huge cuts. The board decided to do just over $300,000 in cuts and then give us more time to explore to see where the issues were in the budget. So we ended up doing the $300,000 in cuts. During that time also, the board went down a pathway of looking at their strategic plan and asked a group of stakeholders to come in, community members, teachers, other staff, business owners, leaders in the community, to come in and go through a process to redo the school district strategic plan and create a long-range facilities plan. Out of that meeting, there were 5 strategic priorities that were created. Try to make this a little bit larger here. So out of that strategic planning process, there were 5 strategic priorities that were identified from those group meetings. First one was to develop and implement a comprehensive communication strategy. Second one was to increase the fund balance to ensure that the district is financially stable and within board policy, what we just talked about. Third item was to develop a long-range facilities plan and budget that includes a maintenance program. Fourth item was to develop a safety plan that includes mental wellness and secure facilities. And the fifth item was to develop collaborative career and college readiness opportunities. So this was the strategic road, if you will, heading into the next 5 years. Right now, this would be the end of the second year. Obviously, we've been in a pandemic, so we've been doing some work, but trying to survive the pandemic at the same time. So after developing that strategic plan in the summer of 2020, we engaged with a company to help us do a facilities assessment. And we had ideas of what we had for needs in the district, but we needed somebody else to tell us that, also to confirm our needs, because obviously we're not engineers. And so we engaged with ISG, which is a facilities company, and they came back with $20 million in deficiencies or deferred maintenance that needed to be done throughout the district. So taking that information, we decided to go out to the community and ask them questions in regards to how we are doing, both in the district, and also what should we prioritize if we're going to start fixing our facilities, what's important to the community, and also what is the tax tolerance of the community at this time. When that survey came back, the results showed that the tax tolerance at the time was around $14 million if we were going to do something. And we'll get more to the tax impact stuff here a little bit later. And so the school board took that, reprioritized. Obviously, $20 million does not equate very well with $14 million. So we took the information from the survey to the community and put together what ended up being 4 questions for the community to answer. The survey did show support for questions 1 and questions 2, which we'll go through. And questions 3 and questions 4, people wanted more information about. They were kind of evenly split. There was 30% yes, 30% no, and the 40% in the middle, it said, tell us more information, give us more information. So that's where on February 8th, the board decided to pass an election resolution to go out for the vote that's coming up on May 11th. Obviously, May 11th, vote day. If any or part or all of the questions pass, we would begin immediately into design, implementation, and construction. So, what are the questions? We'll go through and show you each of what the ballot questions are, and then we'll go into a little bit more detail of each of those questions. First question is the approval of a capital project levy. Shall the capital project levy authorization proposed by the School Board of Independent School District 252 be approved? By voting yes on this ballot, you're voting for a property tax increase. What does that mean? Capital projects levy referendum is $400,000 per year. What we are doing is identifying all of our technology needs, both hardware, software, staffing, staff development, and everything, and putting it into this question 1. That will relieve significant stress off of our general fund. By doing that, we will be able to start working our way back toward our fund balance policy and getting us in a better financial position. If the question doesn't pass, the district will be required to make additional cuts to rectify our budget, because we cannot keep operating the way we are doing currently. Does that mean cut all of technology? I don't think so, because technology is very important to the district right now. Well, what does that mean? Well, it could be a combination of programming, staffing, or other items within the budget. Questions? Yes, sir.
Regardless of what happens with the referendum vote, if this is how we're going to pay for the one-on-one technology for the next decade, that we look past the 10 years of what the cost of technology would be after that, and how that's going to be paid for?
This basically gives us a line item budget, and so whatever the technology is, whether it's laptops or other devices or whatever the technology is, this gives us a basis. Obviously, we can't predict the future of what that technology is or how much it's going to cost. But it does give us a basis for what we can say if Gadget X comes out and that's the next best thing since sliced bread. We will have to figure out if Gadget X is what it is with Cannon Falls. I guess I can't guarantee that. So, yep. Any other questions? Okay. Question number 2. So just before we get further into this, question 1 is a standalone question. Question 2 is a standalone question. And as we get into 3 and 4, 3 and 4 are dependent on question number 2 passing. And we'll talk more about that as we get into it. So question number 2, approval of school building bonds. Shall the School Board of Independent number 252 be authorized to issue general obligation school building bonds in an amount not to exceed $10.45 million for acquisition and betterment of school sites and facilities? By voting yes on this ballot question, you are voting for a property tax increase. What does that mean? This is broken down more into our review and comment. So you're going to get some generalization here, but if you look for more information on our school website, it has the exact breakdown of that $10.45 million. So if you have questions, I can certainly point you in that direction. The biggest pieces of question number 2 is to improve and renovate the career and tech ed space, or the wood and metal shop space, if you want to refer to it as that, and to finish off the other 50% of the indoor air quality in the academic wings of the middle school, high school, which is on the east end of the high school. It's at the middle school wing and the high school wing. The renovations in the shop area really hasn't been touched since its inception about 60 years ago. The renovation areas, well, in today's world, obviously, CTE classes are becoming more and more needed. Absolutely. And so we're not adding on to the 4 walls. We want to make better efficiencies out of the space that we have, which is going to include moving some stuff around inside, whether it be walls, gas lines, electrical, and then also update the ventilation in there, because obviously welding fumes are bad, and wood fumes over time. So that's a pretty easy, we don't know what it looks like yet, but we do need to make better use of our space because we have good partnerships within the community that we're trying to take advantage of, and they want to give us machinery, but we need to have the space for that machinery. The second big part here is we talked about improving the indoor air quality that impacts student learning, especially in the academic wings, and replacing the unit ventilators, which are getting toward the end of their useful life. As I mentioned before, back in 2015, there was some updates made to them so that they could be more serviceable. But in the end, we do want to hook up the system to what was also implemented in the west side of the high school. The other parts to question 2 revolve around replacing roof sections in the high school that are needed, and also at the CCC because we still are using that in various capacities, not only for activities for the school, but also with the community center being there as well. We'll be looking at doing some tuck pointing on some walls. And the other big piece of this is addressing the drainage deficiencies is the best way to put it, I think. Half of our roof sections in the high school drain into our courtyard. But there's no drain in the courtyard to take the water away. That causes issues, believe it or not, over time. And sometimes very quickly when some of you have seen the media center flooded. And plus those big trees in there are getting old.
Well, and when it was built, it wasn't closed in.
Right. And so those are the things that need to be rectified. And so those are the water issues in the high school. In the elementary, on the back side of it, we have water that's coming toward the building. Those of you that own houses never want water coming toward your house. So those site drainage issues need to be addressed. Any questions about this question?
Yeah, just some people have indicated to me, you talk about some of the indoor air quality on the old part, the original part of the high school, and people wonder why hadn't that been done when they did the last big project? People assumed that's what happens, that they fixed everything then.
Right, and I've heard that, yep. And the simple answer is they ran out of money, for what they were planning to do, because I believe they did it through board authorization. That wasn't a vote. That was based off of dollars that the school had through LTFM. And so when they started planning it, they got to a point where they had to make some decisions about where they stopped at. And so they decided to fix the other half up so that it was serviceable for a few more years down the road, is my understanding.
Okay.
Obviously, I wasn't here. And so, some of that, but that is the stories that I'm hearing. So, but it wasn't completed outright into one system, if that's the question.
Right, it's just that there was the opinion of a lot of people that, why wasn't it done when they did that? I can't remember how big that bond
Right.
issue was back then.
When the school made that decision to use in-house money, but to borrow that money, that's the board authority. So you're borrowing against deferred maintenance dollars that we get from the state. So they took a chunk of that money and used it for whatever project they came up with, and it ended up being about 50% of the middle school, high school. And then what was left is those academic areas, and they had unit ventilators in there. And I believe they switched them over from steam to hot water, which is more efficient, but still left the unit ventilators in place at the time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Question number 3, approval of school building bonds, gymnasiums, and outdoor athletics. If school district question number 2 is approved, so the only way that this one can pass is if the question number 2 passes. Cannon Falls Area Schools, Minnesota must be authorized to issue general obligation school building bonds in the amount not to exceed $1.75 million for acquisition and betterment of school sites and facilities, including but not limited to the renovations and updates to the district's gymnasiums and outdoor athletic facilities and sites. So, starting with the inside part here, and then we'll move to the outdoor piece. In the middle school, high school gymnasium, the bleachers in there, which hopefully all of you have been in there. First of all, they're not ADA compliant, so not everybody can get into them. Secondly, those bleachers are 20 plus years old and nearing the end of their useful life. The company that made them is no longer in business, and there's no longer parts available to start fixing them once it starts falling apart. As most of you know, there used to be backs on one side of the bleachers. Once those started failing, we just took the rest of them down because it looks like a Swiss cheese approach to backrests. And so at some point, those bleachers are going to come out and they're not going to go back in. So the hope is that when, if question 3 does pass, we would be able to get a new section of bleachers in there that are ADA compliant and serviceable and safe for everybody. As you are taking bleachers out of gymnasiums, you invariably scratch the floors up. And so that's where we need to resand the floor down and restripe the court once we're done. The elementary gymnasium had water damage in there a few years ago in one end of the gym. It kind of bubbles depending on the time of year. Safety issue for kids that use it for gym throughout the year and sometimes after school activities. That part of the wood floor that's bubbling and has water damage would be replaced, and then everything would be sanded down and restriped to look the same as well. Outdoor. In the athletic stadium, beautiful area out back that we don't use nearly enough, and we need to start using it. One way to do that to extend the day would be to provide lighting back there. That is probably the biggest piece to that, would be extending the day because by providing lighting, we're able to hold more activities out back there. The second part of that is in the athletic stadium part there inside the track. The watering system is non-functional at this point, and there's hardly any grass left on that field. For those of you that have walked on it, it's like concrete in the fall. And we have kids practicing out there, and we have kids playing games on it. And plus the crown is too high at this point, and should be lowered back to a normal crown. So the idea would be to replace the defective watering system and put sod back on with this question to go with the lights and be able to use that area further into the evening, as it obviously is a beautiful area back there. I think that's it for the outside that I've hit. Oh, the other part is the resurfacing of the track. Track should be resurfaced about every 7-8 years or so. We're on about year 9 or 10. So again, we need to take care of the things that we have currently. Resurfacing of the track is just respraying it down, restriping it, resealing it, basically like you would with your driveway. If we go any further, the thinking is sometimes cracks develop in the track, which is a larger cost over a period of time. Any questions on question number 3?
A citizen talked to me thinking that the field house floor was included in this. To my understanding, that is not a part of this. It is the gymnasium and gymnasium only.
Yep, gymnasium only in the high school, gymnasium only in the elementary, and then the outdoor athletic stadium area.
Wonderful. Thank you. Just wanted some clarification.
No, that's a good question. Come on. There we go. Question number 4. Approval of school building bonds for artificial turf. If school district question number 2 and number 3 are approved, shall the school board of Independent School District number 252 be authorized to issue general obligation school building bonds in the amount not to exceed $685,000 for acquisition and betterment of school sites and facilities, including but not limited to the acquisition and installation of artificial turf to the district stadium field. By you voting yes on this ballot question, you are voting for a property tax increase. The turf question. The reason why this was asked, because we were told, and it makes sense, that you will be no closer to installing turf later on in your life if you decide to go with just grass right now. You will pay a full installation of turf later on if you decide to do it 5 years from now, because you have to do the regrading and the drainage of that. This is a good time to ask this question to see if the community wants to go here or not, because the grading would be done as part of question number 3 passing, because question 4 can't pass unless question 3 passes. The grading would be done, and all you would be doing is laying the carpet down on top of it. Sounds simple. Obviously, there's more steps to it. But it would still further the use of that area even further than the lights and the sod, simply because you wouldn't have to wait for drying time for the sod throughout the day. You wouldn't have to worry about wear and tear on grass. You could use it as much as you can schedule it. I think from what I've heard, the heaviest of rains, you wait about 5 or 10 minutes and the field is pretty dry from there. Again, it would be not only used for activities, it would be used throughout the school academic day as much as we could get kids on it, that they wanted to be on it. Obviously, phy-ed classes, athletic practices. Soccer would move its varsity games up to that field. In either case, if we pass question 3 or question 4, soccer would move up there. The question has come about for football. Is football going to move back to the school? The school stance on that is we're not forcing a move for varsity football. The city has been gracious to host us, and we are more than willing to play games down at John Birch as long as the city is willing to have us, or if the football team decides to move. We're not forcing anything. We know it's kind of a hot button topic at this point, and so it would happen organically at this point. Then again, they would still have practices on that field back at the school. There would be junior high football games, JV football games, soccer games at the stadium. One of the examples that my AD gave me from this past fall was we were set to host Stewartville here at 4 o'clock one afternoon in late August, early September, one of the first few games. Heat index was way too high to play during the day, but it would have fallen to the appropriate temperature allowed by the State High School League a couple hours later. A couple hours later, we've been playing soccer in the dark behind the elementary school out by the trees there. If we would have had lights, we would have been fine. Invariably, we ended up moving the game to Stewartville and losing a home game. Just an example. Anyhow, the cost for all 3 of the last questions is $12.7 over 20 years. We've stayed within that $14 million that the people have told us in the survey. And so we're trying to listen to the community from that respect. Any questions about question number 4?
Jeff, I would just say that I think it's a good idea, and I personally think football should be up at the school, especially as we as a city contemplate what we're going to do to John Birch to make it a better stadium. In my opinion, if football is up at the school, we can do more to make John Birch a true baseball-only park.
Sure, and that's one of the discussion points I've had with people also is, with us only having John Birch to play at, we don't have any other choices to go to. If the city would ever make that move, that's your guys' choice. And so we need to make sure that we have our own property to do that, and that's kind of one of the questions that we wanted to ask people. even in the pandemic, you guys were gracious enough to let us start football late and play there. But we were also looking for alternatives in case we weren't allowed to play there, which would have been understood. But again, we didn't have any other alternatives really, other than other school districts.
Right, and I understand that,
Yeah.
and I know football tears the heck out of
Yeah,
part of John Birch.
sure.
Just one question.
Yep.
And everybody's been asking me. Question number one is kind of a standalone question, isn't it? But question 2 has to pass for 3 and 4 to be approved, right?
Yep.
That's how it works.
Yeah, you can vote yes on question 1, yes on question 2, and no on 3 and 4. You follow me?
Yep.
You can vote no on question 1, yes on question 2, and no on 3 and 4. You can vote no on question 1 and vote yes on all 3 of the other questions, and it'll still go except for question 1.
Except for question, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yep.
So it
People have
basi-
asked me that question, and I just wanted to
Yeah,
make sure.
And that's good communication that we need to have on that people understand that.
So what people need to know is that about 80% of this whole cost is question 2.
That's a lot of it. Out of the 3, absolutely. So why now? Obviously, we have the community support. We wouldn't have gone out for the question to be asked. The community surveys came out at about 57% for question 1 and for question 2. Both 57% question 1, 57 question 2. And again, the people wanted more information on question 3 and question 4. Historically low interest rates, I think we all know that. At this point, this is a good time to borrow money, if we're going to borrow it. Favorable construction market. Materials are very high right now. It's our understanding from the contractors that we've talked to is that the labor, though, is cheap because everybody's looking for jobs. And that includes, well, your normal K-12 contractors are getting some work, but it's the private business contractors that are building your skyscrapers or whatever else, the other commercial type building people are looking for work because people have been working from home. So, the referendum is also a result of our strategic plan. Tax impact. At this point, I'll tell you that if you haven't gone to our school website, we do have a tax impact calculator that will show your individual results for your plot of land that you have. And so, and if you have more ag land, don't be afraid to call Ellers, who's our financial advisors, and they will be more than happy to walk you through your tax impact. For tonight's presentation, though, the average house cost in Cannon Falls was determined to be $225,000. So a lot of our examples are going to be based off of that. In looking at the 4 questions here individually, if question 1 passes and everything else fails, it's a $66 increase on a $225,000 house. Question 2 would cost $50 a year on $225,000. Question 3, $7 a year. Question 4, $3 a year. For a total of $126 a year on a $225,000 house if all 4 questions pass. Roughly $10 a month is what it equates to, obviously. Obviously, everybody has their own values of their houses and of their commercial and industrial businesses, and there's more detail again on our school website with our tax impact calculator. To go with this, Minnesota does have a residential property tax refund. There's a couple of different tax relief measures. There's a regular residential property tax refund and the special residential property tax refund as well. And there's more information on this website right here, you can see my cursor, that will give you if you qualify for that. Examples, we'll go down to the $225,000 house. If you do have that $225,000 house and you have an annual household income of $80,000, the tax impact before, as we determined up above here, was $126 a year. If all 4 questions pass, based on that regular property tax refund, you would get $76 a year off of that. The total for all 4 questions then would drop to $50 a year, or roughly $4 a month. To finish up here, I got a couple of how do we compare to area schools, not only with our tax impact currently, but if we do pass all 4 questions, what does that look like? As you can see down here, we have different school districts from Randolph to Lake City to Hastings to Goodhue to Kenny-Wanamingo, Red Wing, Zumbrota, and Northfield. This part of the graph here shows where we are currently at with our current spending per ADM. Per ADM is average daily membership, and that means per student. So what is our total levy per student in the Cannon Falls district? Here's where we currently reside. If all 4 questions pass, this would be the per ADM increase, and obviously that would slide us closer to the middle of this group, maybe a little bit above the group average and still above the state average. Total school property taxes, based on that $225,000 house, same set of schools. Currently, a $225,000 house will cost you $848 in taxes. I think on this graph, they must have rounded up because they ended up with a $127 tax increase instead of $126. But as you can still see, it still puts us toward the middle. Slightly lower than the group average, a little bit above the state average. Obviously, these numbers are from payable 2020. We're in payable 21 right now. So some of these school districts could be running referendums at this time also. And so those numbers could be a little bit higher than what they currently show on here. Questions?
Regarding the turf,
Yes.
what's the average lifespan of turf?
I believe they said it was 10 to 12 years. 10 with average maintenance, 12, maybe a little bit further with really, really good maintenance of it.
How would that compare with if you had just grass and the maintenance costs over that same 10 to 12 year period?
I got a chart just the other day that talks about that. And I should have brought that tonight. Obviously, you don't have to mow turf. You don't have to stripe turf. You don't have to fertilize turf. You don't have to water turf. There's a lot of savings there. I think the cost of the turf up front is going to be a little bit more. Over the lifespan and the actual usage of it, you get more out of the turf.
That's what I suspected.
Yep.
But it's people would want to know, because obviously with turf you can have a whole lot more activity than
Well,
you can on
and that's the question is, are you're going to get, so I want to say on average 5 to 7 times more activities a month out of turf than you would on grass. Just simply from the standpoint of you can't run grass into the ground, literally. You need to give it time to regenerate, if you will.
a bigger bang for the buck.
Again, I think so, but it depends on how you look at it and, who you're talking to also. But I can certainly share that more of that information that I do have that back at school.
Any
Did
other
you say that
questions?
there's a referendum website?
Yep, if you go to our school website, cannonfallschool.com, it is right on the front page. It's a picture of the elementary, and if you just click on the link, it'll take you right to the referendum website.
Thank you.
Yep.
You've done a great job presenting the referendum. Not to be a loaded question, but that first thing you said, when you had somebody come in and do estimates, it was $20 million, and this is asking for about 12.7. When somebody sees that, are they thinking there's still 7 million in improvements hanging somewhere that might come up here in the next 5-10 years, or is there any of that will be shared, or
When we look at that listing, it was a pretty comprehensive list, and we prioritized what the highest needs were, medium needs, and then the lowest needs. The lowest needs are going to be something that we can, once we get our budget back to square, we can start working on them over a period of time. It won't be the immediacy of some of the needs that we have right now, if that makes sense. Yep. Yep.
Any other questions? Well, I appreciate you coming
All right.
tonight.
Thank you.
Yep,
Thank you.
I'm going to unplug here real quick.
okay, thank you.
Yep. I got to get out of Rosie's way here, don't I? Again, thank you guys for having me.
Yep, thank you. Okay, our next presentation tonight is a Small Cities Development Grant. We got Karen Ducharme from SEMCRA.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm Karen Ducharme. I'm the Administrative Development Director at SEMCRA. My purpose of my visit tonight is to get approval from the City Council of a resolution to conduct a survey, first of all, to determine need and interest for a housing rehab program within the city, and then to get a financial commitment for that program. So, first of all, the program is the Small Cities Development Program. It's a competitive grant program through the state of Minnesota's Department of Employment and Economic Development. Those are funds that HUD funds to deed for on an annual basis. Cities compete on a competitive basis for up to $600,000 to do improvements to homes. So they have to be income eligible at the time of their application. The grant period is typically 3 years. And in your packet, I provided the most current income limits and some of the materials that we use for the survey, just so you can see that and then see what the current income limits are. But we do necessary improvements to homes, so it's maintaining the overall structural integrity of a home and preserving the city's housing stock. We typically do things like windows, roofs, siding, insulation, electrical improvements, plumbing updates. Sometimes we'll get into a kitchen where they don't have proper food preparation area, but those are really handled on a case-by-case basis. So the first step in this whole process is conducting that survey so that we can define what our need and interest is, and then we do a windshield survey to document the physical conditions of the property. So we overlap those two surveys and kind of develop the program from there. The timeline would be, we would start, if we approve tonight, unless the city has additional questions or things that they want me to research, then we would start this process upon the approval by doing the paper survey and then doing the windshield survey. Then in August, September timeframe, we would review those results with the city, and then from there develop the preliminary proposal, which is typically due in November. Then the state reviews those applications and provides a ranking in December typically. If you get a competitive or marginally competitive ranking, you're invited to submit a full application, which is typically due in February or March of the following year. So this program would be for funding in 2022. Any questions on the overall program or the process?
Did I see that you have to have 51% response to?
So we don't have to have that. We put that in there kind of to shoot for a goal.
Okay.
We typically get around high 30s, low 40s, sometimes mid 40s. So, and we've been successful through this application process. I want to say about 9-10 years ago, they changed the application process. And ever since they've changed that, after the first year of them changing the application process, we've been successful every time we've applied. We've never had one that has come back that hasn't been marginally competitive or competitive. So it was the first year it was a lot of change, and then the next year after that, we've been successful every year after that. So again, we try to shoot for a high percentage just to let people know and get them to return the survey. But again, we don't have to have any specified requirement. We just want to encourage people to apply. Obviously we look at individual surveys, but we do analysis on a larger scale.
Any questions for Karen?
So again, as I mentioned when I started presenting this program, we're looking for approval of resolution tonight to begin this process and for a $5,000 commitment from the city of Cannon Falls. That $5,000 commitment wouldn't be paid unless, one, the grant is successful, we're awarded, receive the financial award, and then you have time to budget for it. It's a 3-year grant period, so we typically invoice in the second or third year for that $5,000. The state wants to see that the city has skin in the game. Semtra will also match that, and then through Goodhue County levy that Semtra gets, we would provide a match to that too. They support the Semtra by funding staff to produce the application. So there is that match to the grant as well.
So as I understand, if this goes forward and we get approved, the people that are able to use the money to improve their homes, it's a 7-year period, and as long as over those 7 years you stay at your home, at the end of that time frame it becomes a grant. Otherwise, if you sell before that, you have to pay back the loan interest-free, correct?
Correct. So the rental, and we don't know what activity, if it's going to be owner-occupied or rental, it's what the survey is going to produce is tell us what that need and interest is. So it could be owner-occupied, it could be rental, it could be a combination of those two. Typically, the owner-occupied we structure as a 10-year descending forgiveness. So if they stay in the house for 6 full years, it's 100%, and then it starts descending by 20%. And then those monies get repaid to the city, and it basically creates a revolving loan fund to rehab other income-eligible households within the city of Cannon Falls. The rental is a 7-year loan term.
Okay.
And that's 100%. So if the owner of that rental property sells within the 7 years, there's no descending forgiveness. It would be 100% repayment.
Any other questions?
Based on this letter, it looks like the survey has to be completed via paper and mailed back. Is there any way to do it online?
We have the capabilities to do that. We have a program similar to DocuSign where we could do that. If you have email addresses for residents, we could do something like that. Or if a citizen wanted to contact me, I could do it on a case-by-case basis too. That's not a problem.
Well, just like the survey that they did for the school, you got like code, and you can either fill it out, or you could go to a website, plug in your number, and just do it online. I'm just
Okay.
thinking you'd get more people that would respond
Okay.
if they could go online. There's
And I
just
can
a thought.
follow up with the school and see how they did that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Sure. And we have a couple different programs that are just new that I haven't played around with too much, but yeah, it would be definitely easier than handling a bunch of forms and envelopes.
Okay, well, we thank you for your presentation.
Okay.
And we'll take it up with the council if they want to go forward, or somebody make a motion to partner with Semcra, but for $5,000.
Well, I think it's a good idea, so I know we have a resolution, doesn't have a number here, but I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution in our package.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Motion by Duncan and a second by Montgomery to pass a resolution to partner with Semcra on the Small Cities Development Grant for $5,000.
Before we vote, it's okay that we do this in the presentation, that this wasn't something separate, and we don't have to put it in consent. We can do this.
We can put it on the consent agenda for the next meeting, have it put in our resolution form.
Okay.
Because it's in the presentation
Yeah.
part of the
Yeah.
meeting, so I didn't know if we could take
Okay.
action on it immediately, but if we can, let's do it.
Okay, then we'll do that at,
Move it to our next
move it
meeting.
to the next meeting then.
Okay.
Okay.
You'll see it on the consent agenda then.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, the next item is consent agenda. Consent agenda items may be adopted under one motion as presented, or may be removed for discussion and resolution as council business. For you at home in the audience, I'll go through the consent agenda. Item A, just and correct claims for the accounting period ending April 14th, 2021. Item B, minute meetings for the April 6th, 2021 City Council meeting. Item C, Resolution 2544, calling for the redemption of the outstanding Geo Water Revenue Refunding Bonds, Series 2010A, and Geo Refunding Bonds, Series 2012B. Item D, approve the extended outdoor seating for Tillian Brewing. Item E, hire an unscheduled part-time employee for the ambulance department. Item F, Cannon Valley Trail Joint Powers Board member appointment. Item G, approve an off-sale 3.2 malt license for Casey's Retail Company. Item H, approve a tobacco license for Minnesota Tobacco Plus, Inc. Item I, approve the West Side Park Tree Plan. And item J, introduction and first reading of ordinance 375, amending the city code, chapter 152, relating to sign height and parking and loading services. Is there anything the council would like to pull down? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Bringle, a second by Gesme to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, we'll get into council business. Item A, the American Rescue Act stimulus allocation and water tower project. Neil, you want to
Sure.
update us on that?
You know, there was a $1.9 trillion million American Rescue Act that was approved recently. Of that money, the city will receive approximately, now I mean approximately because there's still some stuff up in the air, $450,000. We will receive about $225,000 in May of this year, and approximately $225,000 in May of next year. When they approved that stimulus package, water and sewer projects were listed as approved uses of the money. So in 2022, we have a bond issue coming off, which is $372,000 for the water enterprise fund. You know, we've been talking about a water tower project for, I don't know, many years, long before I got here. And with that said, $450,000 with stimulus money and $372,000 in freed up bond money for 2022 could be used to paint and restore the water tower. That's approximately about $820,000, $822,000 worth of money we could invest in the water tower, and that should take care of that project. If there's money that's left over, the water reservoir up on the hill is in need of repair. We're going to have a dive and clean done here that you approved, and they will see what the inside of that looks like, and will be able to and give us a cost estimate of what that cost to fix that. I know there's some cracks in it, and I know that it definitely needs some repair work. The Finance Committee looked at this, and they approved it unanimously to go ahead and use the stimulus money for the water tower project. That's where we are at today, and discussion. And if you would like to move forward with the project, the reason we're starting this early is because of all the antennas and equipment up on top of the tower. When I talked to Goodhue County, they wanted well in advance notice. So 2022 is not that far away, and putting up temporary towers to hold all that equipment and antennas takes time. So that's where we're at today. We're not looking for approving any engineering contracts or anything like that, but if you want me to move forward with it, using them two sources of funds, I will begin the process and we're going to have to do some preliminary engineering work to see where that, where the money, how much the tower will cost, and et cetera, et cetera. And so you'll probably see that at the next meeting, and then if you approve it today, I can contact the county and say, we're going to move forward.
Any questions? Somebody want to make a motion to move forward using our funds from the American Rescue Act to allocate to the water tower project?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, a motion by Montgomery and a second by Gesme to approve that motion. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay. Second item on council business, Downtown Farmers Market Ordinance Amendment Policy and Procedures, Application and Site Map. Neil, you want to take that?
Sure. Last year when we talked about the farmers market, we had some unfinished business that we needed to attend to. What you'll see in your packet, I'll call it a farmers market packet, because there are several items that we're looking at. We're looking at an ordinance amendment which gives the ability for a farmers market to be at that particular spot, the parking lot. We all know that from last year's discussion that the farmers market was is there because it's always been there, but the ordinances didn't reflect that. So what you see in your packet is a definition. The definition of a farmer's market is an outdoor and public and reoccurring assembly of farmers, ranchers, growers, or their representatives selling the food or plants that they produce, including but not limited to fruit, vegetables, meats, cheeses, bakery products, jams, jellies, and flowers, plant seedlings directly to the consumers. And then the other change in the ordinance is down under F, under permitted accessory uses, farmers markets accessory to a governmental or public regulated utilities, buildings, or structures necessary for the health, safety, and general welfare of the city as a permitted use. And then exempt from peddlers, and we just added farmers market underlined on that. So that's the ordinance change. The other thing is the policy and procedures for the market that governs how the market will run. I'm not going to go over that in depth. And along with an application form that we've kind of changed a little bit over from last year, but it still is relatively the same. And then a map showing the location of where the farmers market will be located on that particular parking lot. When the Finance Committee looked at this, they thought it was all good except for one caveat that there was some concern of where the farmers market was going to be located. Sue's garage is right beside that, and they thought maybe there was going to be an issue with her and her customers. Mayor Altoff took the lead on that and went and talked to the business owners down in that area, and what he found out was that they were willing to give it a try and go forward. I've been hearing that it looks like a good spot. It fits well, and actually Jofferson, that's where he sits all fall underneath that one shade tree. So the Finance Committee did review and approve, and now we're looking for discussion and a recommendation from whole council. What we'll need to do is bring these three the definitions of uses and exceptions back to the council as in an ordinance form, if you agree.
In this document, did we change the fee for the sellers? Wasn't it just $100? And this one I see we have a 100 and a 150.
150 for a larger space.
Right, basically two parking spots for
Right.
150.
Oh, but did we change, was it that way last year? Was it 150 for two?
No, it was just
See,
100.
So here's my question. If we're going to have a designated space like we do on that page with so many spots, we've seen some weeks there'll only be, 3, 4, 5 vendors. Some weeks there might be 7 or 8. If we have an allocated spot for them, why couldn't they use 2 spots if there was space? And if more vendors show up, then they take up less space, and that it's just $100 for everybody, because, that's going to have extra $50 for the season for our local vendors to occupy extra space when that space might be available. Great, use it. If not,
It might be available anyway.
right.
Is that what you're
That's what I'm saying. There might be only 3 or 4 vendors, and we've got these, about 10 slots plus the proposed overflow. Why not just a one-time fee? Use the space that you have.
Well, I think some of the problem was that in the last, at least couple of years, we had people taking up 2 and 3 spaces.
You kind of
In-
stretched it out.
In the lower part of what I call the lower part of the
Sure,
parking
sure.
lot.
And with this proposed space, now there's limits, and if we say this is your spot, you got to pay to show up and to be there and to be licensed, and that's what you pay $100 for. But if you want to take up 2 spots, great.
Well-
And then just to be courteous to your neighbor, because if somebody else is there and they paid their $100, I'm not sure if that extra $50 for 2 spots for.
You're saying if that's a dedicated spot for the vendors on Saturday, 8 to 12, and the nut guy and Josephson's are the only one that show up, so if they bleed over into another thing, I guess.
I think in the last few years anyhow, it's usually been 3 to 5 vendors on any given Saturday.
I'm just saying, I think that extra $50,
The problem with that, Matt, is that the nice people don't say anything, and they don't get a spot. Then, I mean, I would rather say, if we've got a choice here, I'd rather say everyone just gets one spot.
sure.
Period. And then there's no bleeding over, because that's what happens. I've been down there. It's been a few years, but the people that think that, I can park my car sideways and get a little more space, it happens, and the people like you and me aren't going to complain, but it can end up being a problem if you've got a lot of vendors. So I don't know.
Do you think that would be a problem with this allocated space? You think
I
that
would
that
say forget the 150. You just pay 100, and this is how much you get, no matter if you're the only person there. I don't know. That's just me.
Are
Do
you,
what you want, I guess, but
but what do you do about the person that does come in and takes up 3 spots and parks
Then
their
they-
vehicle?
well, then they're Outgespiel. They're
Well,
gone.
I know that, well, I'm not going to say.
I think what it comes down to is the farmer's market can be really simple. You pay to show up, flat fee, and, try to be nice, try to be neighborly. I don't think that it's a huge problem that people are taking 2, 3, more spaces. And if we have this allocated and they're the only one there, oh well, more power to them. They paid to show up, they're there. Just flat fee, $100, forget the 2 spot. I don't think that, we have anybody walking down there enforcing that we charge somebody a ticket if they're parked over the line because they're taking up too much space. Let's just keep it neighborly, $100, flat fee.
Well, I know the fee, whether it's 100 or 150, is pretty cheap compared to other communities.
Great.
I
That's
agree.
what Diane has indicated.
I agree with the $100 thing. The only thing I disagree with Matt on, and it's probably just because, maybe it's because I've seen it happen, is just give everyone their spot. And no, I don't care if there's only one person there, because there'll be a week when someone will take 3 spots and then someone will show up a half hour late and their spot will be gone. I don't know.
You're saying assign them a spot?
Or just say you got one stall.
Well, I agree, they should only have 1 stall.
But I don't know. It's probably splitting hairs. We can see if there's a problem. Go ahead, see if there's a problem, we'll deal with it then.
I
That's
see what
fine
you're
with
talking
me.
about, they park their cars in the back, but usually they only take up 1 stall, they don't, unless when they were in the lower parking lot, they
Yeah.
had a lot more room to expand,
Well, we'll see how it goes. I mean, it may not even be a problem, so.
but in the upper one,
Why
they're
make a
gonna
problem
be
where there really
limited to
won't?
1.
I think it'd be almost more like you were saying, if it is a problem, it'd be harder to go down there and try to enforce somebody that says, well, I paid for 2 and look at this person's parked over here. And
I
then we're
know,
gonna
so-
start, if you say, hey, it's a flat fee, you're here, you showed up,
Yeah.
everybody will be neighborly, and we've
Yeah.
got the proposed overflow spot. And changing the location to that further east side of the parking lot, I think that's a great idea. We're gonna be more convenient to the cyclists to get to the trailhead. This could,
It's a big
bring-
safety issue.
yeah, it could bring more
Contains
people
it better.
to the backside of those businesses.
It really
on
contains
foot.
it better, and they don't have a lot of Saturday traffic anyway along there, so
Right.
I think it's fine.
Yeah,
Oh.
both Sue's Garage and Cannon Valley
Specialties.
Specialties
Yep.
could benefit from this if
It
they
could,
do it right.
it'd be fine.
Well, if you're gonna.
Hey guys, I got one question. I can't remember what we settled on. Wasn't this the proposed location for the electric vehicle charging station? Or did we end up moving that?
Getting moved.
Oh,
That
yeah,
got
we
changed.
moved it to the overflow down by the band shell.
Yeah, okay. That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
By the way, when's that gonna start?
I've reached out a couple times and I haven't heard back yet. So you can
That
drive
was a
your
long time ago we approved it.
My Tesla will be
Well,
all safe.
Can I ask one thing here? What about the one-hitters? The people that might come in for a week or 2? Is there any provisions for them to say, $20 a pop up to?
Oh, you mean like a one-time fee for 1 week or 2 weeks
Yeah,
or
maybe-
something? I don't know.
Some guy over-fertilized and has a little bit extra, is not a business in per se as some of the vendors are, and they just want to come down and,
Well, administering that becomes a problem then.
well, that's why I'm asking the question.
To me,
I mean,
it's,
you can't. you
I
can't
understand what you're saying.
Can't deny them coming. Is there any,
Then we
per-
start making it complicated, and then people got to check on them and make sure they, well, yeah, they were here this week and this week, and it gets to be, it's a lot simpler, just a straight fee.
But the original reason for the farmer's market was to sell your excess produce and not do it as a business. And if we shut those people off, that's kind of,
Well, they would.
no, not right neighborly.
Well, they would have a second option because of the other market out at Artisan Plaza. And they got their own
Do they have a
rules.
per day thing?
Oh, I don't know. That's their business because that's on private property.
Well, but the thing is, Steve, I mean, the person would still have to show insurance, and, I mean, it's all these pukey things that we have to do now, that I'm not sure that casual gardener who's got some extra dahlias to sell
So,
if it's even gonna work,
so maybe he should talk to
another vendor,
Steve Josephson and
There
throw
you
his
go.
watermelons on the corn truck.
corn and flowers,
All right.
yeah.
I'm fine with that $100, but why don't you put on the application, you got one space or something? Make it clear and simple.
Well, yeah, it said, what, 10 by 10?
Yeah, 10
Yeah.
by 10.
Just
Yeah,
Take
take
the
the
double, yeah,
150 in the double
exactly.
booth and call it good.
Make it simple, yeah.
Yep, and if it becomes a problem, it's a problem.
I'd make a motion to approve it with that wording to eliminate the double stall and the $150 charge.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Montgomery, second by Bringle to approve the, how should I put it, the ordinance amendment, policy, procedures, application, site map with the $100 fee moving into the upper parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, on the site
Right.
map.
Yep, on the site map.
One caveat I want to just add, and this is just more procedural, because I assume we're going to approve this. With the help of Kyle and the city, we need to clearly let the vendors know where it is and somehow mark it so that,
Well, last weekend, of course, there was two vendors down there in the lower parking lot, but I would just let them go because we hadn't
Yeah,
done
they
it.
don't know
Yeah,
yet.
yeah.
right, but I mean, going forward, we got to get the word out
Yeah,
of where it is so that people
Right, so that they know.
don't
well,
start
well,
showing
when they
up
get their
here and there.
permits.
We'll
they
get the
should
word out
theirs.
there after we pass it and.
They'll get
Yeah.
the map.
Right.
Great.
okay. Any other discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Carried. Okay, let's get into reports. Kyle?
Good evening, council and community. We do have 5 events in the next month, and so I just want to give you the details of those. The first one coming up is Monday, April 26th. This is an open house for First Choice Clinic. They've actually made it a clinic. There is a nurse going to be there. And so April 26th from 3:30 to 5:30, and their ribbon cutting is at 4 o'clock. And it would be really nice to have a good group of people there. Then on the citywide garage sale, I have wonderful news. I had a very nice meeting with Mr. Jim O'Rourke this afternoon, and the Beacon is holding the spring citywide garage sale. They have extended the deadline to April 28th instead of the 21st.
Yeah, excuse me, Kyle, because I did see something on Facebook where they thought it wasn't going to go forward.
So this,
As of this afternoon,
Okay,
it is on.
good.
So April 28th is the deadline, and you can send your ads into customer service at o'rourkemediagroup.com. And so it's still $10, but now they're going to be doing a garage sale listing, a garage sale map, and he was surprised at how much this community was pushing to have this garage sale happen. And so he was like, absolutely, I didn't realize,
What's the day of the garage sale?
May 7th and 8th.
Okay.
That is Mother's Day weekend. Number 3, the Woodhaven Wedding and Events Center out at Gopher Hills. It's a new location where you can hold large ceremonies, large events. It is May 20th from 4 to 6 p.m. And that ribbon cutting is at 4:30. And we will be sharing that ribbon cutting with Hastings Chamber of Commerce. So I hope we can get a lot of people there to show our support. Number 4, the Open Air Fair is scheduled for June 10th. The Open Air Fair is where we have the vendors on the sidewalks of 4th Street, Main Street, and Mill Street. So we will not be closing off any streets. Everyone stays on the sidewalks. Everyone is spread out so it's COVID safe, and we can have that many more vendors. The time on that is going to be 2:30 to 6:30, so it is 4 hours long. And there is a $25 fee for non-chamber members. And so anyone interested in becoming a member can sure give the chamber a call. That's easy enough to do. And lastly, number 5 is our 30th annual golf tournament and fundraiser on June 24th. That's the last Thursday in June. It is being held at the Summit Golf Course. And we have registration forms and sponsorship forms for teams, prizes, awards. And so if you're interested, please contact the chamber or go to our website. The nice thing about this golf tournament is it's not going to be just one location getting all of the glory of the event. We're going to have the golf course. We're going to have a caterer bringing the food in. We're going to have another location bringing the alcohol in. They have to have a license. We will also be using another one of our businesses to put up tents, tables, and chairs. So it's more of a community-wide tournament rather than just one location this year. And we just want to see how it's going to go. Are there any questions? Wow, thank you very much.
Yep, thanks, Kyle. Okay, let's go. A couple committee meetings here. Finance Committee, Bill?
Yeah, 3 of the items we had on our agenda tonight. 2 other items, we talked about Public Works capital equipment schedule, and we have one more that we'll be covering with police capital equipment, and then when we're all done, that'll come forward to the council to decide on those schedules. The other item we talked about was the sandstone development, and I'm not sure when that'll all come forward yet, but we'll get to that.
Okay.
That's it.
Planning Commission?
Okay, we had only had one item on there. It was a preliminary plat for Greg Jablonski. They're going to call it Towering Bluffs, which is up by the water tower. So we've approved the preliminary plat, and that'll be that process will be moving forward and coming to us in the future. And it's for those of you folks at home, it's a 22 unit development up there is what they're planning. And that's it for planning.
Well, Neil and I have met with Greg Javante a couple times here in the last week, and I think he's getting on board here. He's got everything we're even down to, we're talking sidewalks and trees and all that now too.
There may be some slight adjustments on lot widths. He might combine a few of them, which doesn't have any impact on the roads or anything. His concerns were sidewalks. Trees in the boulevard was one, with sidewalks being so close. the trees pushing up the sidewalks. Well, we don't want the maintenance either. So just some, more or less some housekeeping that we discussed. And it's in his part to get what he wants to put together and bring it back and move forward.
Sidewalk was just going to be on one side. So.
Sidewalks on one side. And that's been the way of the last 3 subdivisions that were built. So
Another thing is a park designation too. That's kind of a big issue, but we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
That'll play into account with sandstone, I think.
Yeah, that
I
could come
think
into play.
ultimately that's my
Across
opinion.
the street, yes. Okay, library board.
I see Nicole's, out there somewhere. There she is.
Bo?
Yay!
Hi. All right. So there's not really a whole lot, except the big news is that we finally have a fax machine, and the library board approved the fee is $1 per page. So if people want to come and send faxes, we now finally can. Yay! And as far as programming, we're doing Earth Day programming this week, so check out our Facebook page, check out our website, or stop in the library to get more news about it. And I am teaching fitness classes outside again at Eastside Park, Fridays at noon. I've rebranded the name, so it's not Fit Fridays. Now it's Library in Motion, because there have been requests for it to be other days of the week, so then I can't do a Fit Friday like on a Monday, because that doesn't work. So Library in Motion, and every couple months we might switch to a different day of the week. But I'm teaching low impact cardio right now, and it's really good for people who have limited mobility like me. So come and join us. And I think that's about it.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. Let's see here. Laura.
So we have some exciting news with the Cannonball lot. We took our first step yesterday. EDA, we had a special meeting to approve entering into a purchase agreement with Keller Bartman Properties to build a multifamily housing workforce apartment complex on that lot. So we're waiting for some site plans, but like I said, it's the first step of many, but it's exciting that it's actually moving forward. So big victory, I think, in our world. So.
Okay, thank you. Dan?
So in Public Works, Third Street Bridge repairs started Monday at our first meeting. They're putting up perimeter fencing, getting that ready. Hydrant flushing continues, be on for 2 weeks, probably more. They started on the north end of town and they'll work their way south. So the pool patching is maybe a half a day away from being done. And then that's got to cure for 2 weeks. And then they can paint after they sandblast.
Okay.
We're tuning up the ball fields, putting a lot of attention down at Archie Swenson right now. It's been a year of COVID, so we're kind of catching up on what needs to be done down there. We're going to start filling potholes. We'll be doing hot mix to get the potholes taken care of in town. And we're dealing with a little bit of graffiti at Eastside Park in the pavilion. So we brought back a couple picnic tables. We're going to sand down real good, and we're going to have to paint the walls right by the serving table, the old diving board area there. So that's it.
Seems like the potholes just kind of showed up here in the last week. All of a sudden, they're all over the place.
My daughter has a list.
Okay, Neil?
Just a few things. First part of May, we're going to be starting working on the audit. Michelle and Sarah have been very, very busy the last couple months putting that together. This is their first audit, and they're doing a great job. right after we get done with the audit, we're going to jump right into department budgets for 2022, and it won't be long, and City Council will be looking at that probably June, July. So we did meet with Bucky Lindau and Luke and Bill Angerman and Jason Zimmerman at John Birch Park and discussed the wall and many other different types of ideas. It was a great meeting. We spent probably an hour and a half down there trying to figure out how we're going to get a planning cost to get together to get some funding. So more to come on that one, but it was a great meeting. We left it in Bucky's and Luke's hands to say, okay, these are the ideas that we all had. What do they think are their priorities? And with them priorities, we'll get a planning cost so we can start looking for funding opportunities. So it was a good meeting. That's all I got. Thank you.
I should probably mention again, remember that the John Birch Park project and the school referendum are entirely different projects.
Entirely different.
So we don't get those confused that they're together, entirely different, so. Okay, let's go around. Derek, you got anything out there?
Nope, nothing for me tonight.
Okay, Laura?
No, I'm good.
Nothing for me.
Okay, Matt?
On Thursday, April 22nd, 4:30, starting at the Cannon Valley Trailhead, the gazebo in the city parking lot, Cannon Falls will be hosting a bike ride. It'll be about 6 miles long. They will go at a pretty leisurely pace. And this is separate, but sort of taking the place of the bike to school week, because with COVID, the bike to school week or day probably won't be happening this year. So if there's kids that want to get out on the bike or grown-ups, it's basically open to everybody. But that is going to be Thursday, April 22nd, 4:30, city parking lot, bike Cannon Falls.
Okay. Bill?
I would just like to encourage everybody who has not done so yet to get the COVID vaccination. The sooner we all do it, the sooner we can get rid of these masks and become healthier and everything can fully open up. That's it.
Okay. Steve?
I just had one question, on that John Birch Park. You had a water pipe issue. Was that ever resolved? I thought you said you're going to do that in-house, but.
It's fixed.
Oh.
Anything else?
Oh, yeah.
When did you say that bike in was April 22nd at 4:30 in the city parking lot? Okay.
Thursday.
Exactly, Thursday, 4:30.
Okay. I was going to mention one thing. You're talking about getting your COVID shot. There was some came over the email today. There's openings for COVID-19 vaccine this Friday from 1:30 to 6 at the Cannon Falls Community Center. But you got to register. There's a phone number here, 651-385-2000, or go online to County Goodhue, Minnesota, US/COVID-19 vaccine. They must have a lot of vaccine because I think you could have a shot on Friday if you want it. So go online to that and you can get an appointment for that or call this number, 651-385-2000. That's probably the easiest. Okay, public input. Citizens may speak to issues not on the agenda. Before speaking, please give your name and address for the record and kindly limit your comments to 3 minutes. Public comments must be respectful, pertinent to city business, and adhere to the applicable data privacy rules. The City Council will not take action on any issue raised by the public, may choose to schedule consideration of the item on a future agenda. Public input. Rosie.
Luke is gonna, Luke?
There it is.
It's there, it's there.
Yes! Okay. And, okay, it's my annual visit. Okay. The time of the year to look for the dwarf trout lily. And this little flower only grows in this area, 600 acres, no place else in the world. And it's, it only blooms for a couple of weeks and then disappears. Now, we've had a lot of tours on our property, but the tornado wiped out a huge batch. The flood a couple years later then took out another bunch. So I'm looking to go on the other side of the Little Cannon River, and anybody wants to come help me, we just all fan out. This is what the DNR did many years ago when they first found it. And they wanted us to name give the colonies numbers. But we get them names, and we name them after the people who find them. So your name may be emblazoned on our property. Yeah, that's worth it right there. Okay. The lily possesses a genetic and chemical makeup unlike that of any other plant. What I want people to know, and what we put on our flyers, that as rare as this flower is, there is only one thing more rare, and that is you. Okay. So the other thing that I wanted to mention was about the farmer's market. And a few of us started it many, many years ago, and what we found, that's when we had a Super Value here, and Gene Abrams, and we would store our big sign at the Super Value. And we said, Gene, why are you letting us do this? Because we are selling fruits and vegetables, and you in Super Value are selling that. And he said, don't worry, you make your money there, and then everybody comes right over here and buys everything. And this is what I really want you to check. How can the farmer's market be a real way to produce community spirit and to attract people to the downtown area? It was a community gathering place, and by the charging, I don't do well with masks, if you can tell. But it's not like I'm itching in bad places. Okay. So, but the farmer's market is an opportunity for this town to create a gathering place, to draw people downtown and to our parks. Our parks are free. The trail in the city parks, that's free. I, a few years ago, organized, well, it wasn't really an organizer, we just went out and we got donations, and that's why we've got 5 upper body exercise pieces of equipment there. Those are expensive little guys. And it was very embarrassing for me to go and get volunteers or money. But I'm so proud of it, because with the trail, you get the lower body exercise, biking or walking, and now you can work on your upper body, which is extremely important. So, yeah, I want you to consider that. With the farmer's market, it's a real opportunity to bring people in and to have a gathering place, but not limit it because they have to have a certain amount of money. And no, you'll probably not see me there, because when we first started out, we were from the cities, we'd moved here, and we had about a half an acre of green beans. I never want to pick another bushel of green beans, okay? It's been my life's goal. I have not done it for all that time. So, appreciate your help. Enjoy the dwarf trout lily. Come out and search around for it. I understand. There's places you'll find it. It's really tiny, though. And I do have a video on YouTube showing how to look for it. Okay? Thank you.
Thanks, Rosie. Thanks, Rosie.
See you guys.
Okay, anybody else public input? Second call. Third and final call, public input.
Not really good at that. I don't want to really. I was glad to hear what Rosie was saying about how rare we all are and different and in our own unique way, I guess. Let's see. I speak on issues not on the agenda. That's me. My name is Tim Tim Deemer and live in Cannon Falls for the past half my life. Limit the comments at 3 minutes. And I'm not sure about if I do my best to be respectful and pertinent to city business and adhere to the data privacy policies. And I'm not sure if some of what I'm wanting to certain things I think could or may be something that could be scheduled for consideration of an item on a future agenda. I know I was just listening to these, like, I don't know, like motivational type speaking tapes, and they're saying on there that, like, we all have a calling. I guess it is kind of more of a, I don't know, faith-based, like audio book that I was listening to, but or like a purpose. But to me, I feel like my calling, this is not one of them. Is speaking in public. I get like lose my train of thought. I get sweaty. My heart gets pumping too much, which I don't know, might be healthy if it's pumping more blood or something. But I'm just wondering about something to discuss in terms of citywide, and not just this city, but more than other cities that I've gone to or that I go to regularly within 20, 30 miles in each direction. The college town to the west, Northfield and Hastings or Red Wing. And I've been asking some questions. It's kind of regarding our, I guess our American heritage, maybe you could call it. I'm just kind of this stuff that just kind of on the fly, and it'd be better if I had notes and whatever. But like the city of Red Wing, for example, there's, I think he said 16 flags that the city is in charge of in the winter, and in the summer they got 18 flags or so. Or there's a few more in the wintertime in parks, schools maybe, and the government, city hall and fire, police. But my thought is to bringing us more like to be like camaraderie maybe, or solidarity, to see. We've all seen the flags at half-staff quite a bit more this year with all the horrendous, senseless killings and whatever, and shootings. And here now it's starting tonight at sunset. They're going to go back up, but now they're, I guess, this is what I've read online, or you can search it yourself or look it up. But with the vice president, which just passed away, it's at half-staff for 10 days. And I believe it's like 30 days for president and a member of Congress. It's one full day. But my point, I guess, or my goal maybe is to see it's something we just, I don't know what to take for granted, or just we don't see it as we go about our day, and the flag's up in the air a little ways, and we're like looking straight ahead, or not sure if like even the businesses, but mainly the post office, the grocery stores, and that, like, one town they'll have it at half-staff, for example, Family Fair. In this town, you go to the next town and it's at full staff, or vice versa, whatever. And to me, looking at, I don't see that as us being, united or just in sync with, like, working together, I guess you've heard it called, and And just a little fact I've learned, it's probably take a little, but this will just be short. I picked this up the other day at an antique store, but it kind of, I should have brought it in a month ago during Easter, a rabbit, but I learned that they say a rabbit has a 360-degree vision. It can see 360 because of where its eyes are, and with just looking, without moving its head, it's got 360, but there's one blind spot. Like we know driving, we got blind spots in our side mirrors and different, but I try not, or I think about this, and I don't want to have rabbit vision, or if you want to call it bunny, or I get rabbit vision, to where there's one blind spot and it's right so far in front of right in front of their nose. So stuff that's right in front of us, we see. Like if I go into the store or wondering, where's the plastic spoon or something I'm looking for, and it's sitting right in front of me, and I'm like looking everywhere else and I don't see it. So it's just a analogy, I guess, or something to think about. Yeah, thanks for the time.
Anyone else, public input? Hearing none, we'll close the public input portion, and I take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Duncan. Second by Montgomery to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.